This table is for people who know their place, my mother said. Then she put her hand on my 8-year-old daughter's shoulder and shoved her away from the chair. Sadie hit the hardwood floor, and her name card slid under the salad plate. My mother shoved my daughter off her chair and hissed, "This table is for real family." I lifted my child, sent the urgent care report to our lawyer, and removed Mom from the school pickup list. By morning, Dad was begging outside our house. For 1 second, nobody moved. The turkey sat beside cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie. Grant had just reached for the gravy. My sister Tessa froze with her fork in her hand. Owen pulled their daughter Lily closer, and my little girl was on the floor. Sadie did not cry. That was what broke me. She looked up as if she had broken some rule only adults knew. "Mom?" she whispered. I pushed back my chair. "Come here, baby." My mother, Marilyn Ellis, sat in the chair Sadie had been proud to claim. She smoothed her navy church dress as if she had corrected a table setting, not knocked down a child. "Children don't sit with adults," she said, "especially children raised to disrespect their elders." This was my house, my table, my daughter. For 36 years, I had been trained to swallow anger before it made anyone uncomfortable. I was Nora Whitaker, the reliable one. I drove my parents to appointments, picked up prescriptions, handled late bills, fixed passwords, and smiled when Marilyn told church friends that children these days had no gratitude. My father, Howard, stood near the kitchen doorway, preparing his favorite sentence. "Don't make this bigger than it is." He had used it after forgotten birthdays, cruel comments, and the year I worked 3 jobs while my college letters never came. Tessa stared at her plate. She had always been the golden one. I was the strong one, which, in my family, meant useful enough to hurt. I knelt beside Sadie. Her wrist was red. Her knee had a thin scrape. She leaned into me like she was trying not to disappear. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. "No," I said. "A grown-up did." Grant stood. His face had gone still. "Nora," Howard began, "let's not ruin Thanksgiving." I looked at him first, because he had watched. Again. Then I turned to Marilyn. She waited for my apology. I knew that look. I had lived under it since childhood. I lifted Sadie into my arms. "You are not family to her," I said. The room was so quiet, I heard the ice maker drop 1 cube in the kitchen. Marilyn's face tightened. "Excuse me?" I held my daughter closer. "Not after tonight." For the first time, I did not ask my mother to understand me. I did not ask my father to protect me. I did not look at Tessa to see whether she believed me. I carried Sadie upstairs, away from the untouched pie and the chair my mother had stolen. Behind me, Marilyn said my name once, sharp and wounded. I kept walking. I washed Sadie's knee in the upstairs bathroom while she sat on the closed toilet lid, too quiet for a child who had just been hurt. The scrape was small. The fear behind her eyes was not. "Am I still allowed at the grown-up table?" she asked. I pressed a clean towel to her knee and forced my voice not to break. "You are allowed anywhere kindness lives." She blinked like she was trying to understand why kindness had left our dining room. I helped her into soft pajamas with little silver stars on them, tucked her into my bed, and put on the cartoon she watched whenever the world felt too loud. She held her stuffed rabbit under her chin. "Is Grandma Marilyn mad at me?" "No, sweetheart," I said. "Grandma Marilyn is responsible for Grandma Marilyn." That was not the answer I had been raised with. In my childhood, Marilyn's anger belonged to everybody but Marilyn. If she slammed a cabinet, I had spoken wrong. If she cried at church, I had embarrassed her. If she ignored me for 3 days, I was supposed to figure out which invisible line I had crossed. But I would not hand that inheritance to Sadie. When I came back downstairs, the meal still sat untouched. The candles had burned low, their wax pooling on the cream runner Sadie and I had chosen that morning. Her handwritten name card lay face down on the floor. I picked it up. Ellie would have cried. Sadie did not. That made it worse. She was already learning the terrible skill of being quiet around cruel adults. Marilyn sat at the table with her purse in her lap. "You made me look like a monster," she said. Grant's jaw moved once, but he did not speak. I put Sadie's card beside my plate. "You did that yourself." Howard sighed, rubbing his forehead like I had caused him a headache instead of a family fracture. "Nora, your mother can be sharp. You know that. But throwing words like family around, she pushed my daughter. She corrected her." Marilyn snapped. Grant stepped forward. "No, you touched our child. You don't get to rename it." Tessa finally looked up, pale and useless. Owen had one arm around Lily, who was watching the adults with wide eyes. Marilyn stood, wounded pride filling the room like smoke. "After everything I have done for you?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I had heard that sentence so many times, it sounded like a hymn. Driving her to physical therapy, calling Medicare about paperwork, logging into her utility account because she forgot her password again, taking Howard to the pharmacy when his knee hurt, watching their dog while they posted beach pictures from Florida. Everything she had done for me had somehow always required my labor. Grant walked to the front door and opened it. "Marilyn," he said, low and clear, "you need to leave." Howard looked shocked. "Grant, come on." "No," Grant said, "not tonight." Tessa gathered Lily's coat without meeting my eyes. Owen whispered something to her, and she nodded too fast. Marilyn passed me at the doorway, close enough for me to smell her rose perfume. "You will regret humiliating your mother," she said. I looked at her hands, the same hands that had pushed Sadie. "I regret letting you near my daughter." Her face changed then, just for a second. Not sorrow, calculation. After they left, the house held its breath. Grant closed the door, locked it, and turned to me. "Let me see Sadie's wrist again." "Oh, she's sleeping." "Then we photograph it before it fades." I stared at him. He softened, but only slightly. "I'm not talking about revenge, Nora. I'm talking about proof." We went upstairs together. Sadie had fallen asleep with one hand outside the blanket. Grant took photos of the red mark on her wrist and the scrape on her knee. No drama, no speech, just date, time, light, evidence. Downstairs, I sat at the kitchen table while the turkey cooled. Grant poured me water, not wine. "Tomorrow," he said, "we take her to urgent care." "It's not broken." "Good, then the record will say that too." I looked at the dining room, at the chair Marilyn had taken, at the little card that said Sadie Whitaker, grown-up table. All my life, I had been hurt in rooms where everyone later claimed nothing happened. Grant put his hand over mine. "From now on," he said, "it gets written down." And for the first time that night, I believed the truth might have a place to sit. Urgent care smelled like hand sanitizer, burnt coffee, and wet winter coats. Sadie sat between Grant and me, swinging her sneakers above the tile floor. She had brought her stuffed rabbit, the one with one floppy ear, and she kept rubbing his paw with her thumb. "I'm not sick," she whispered. "I know," I said. "We're just making sure you're okay." Grant checked us in at the front desk. When the nurse asked what happened, my throat closed around the words. My mother pushed my daughter. It sounded too ugly to say in public, too dramatic, too much like something from a family I used to pity from a safe distance. Grant did not let me disappear inside that shame. She was knocked from a dining chair during a family dinner, he said. We'd like the chart to reflect that. The nurse looked at Sadie, then at me. Not nosy, not judgmental, just careful. A doctor examined Sadie's wrist, bent it gently, checked her knee, asked if her head hurt, asked if anyone had hit her. Sadie answered in her small, honest voice. Grandma Marilyn moved me because I sat in the wrong chair. The doctor's face did not change, but his pen paused. No fracture, he said later. Mild wrist sprain, superficial abrasion on the knee. Ice, rest, children's ibuprofen if needed. Then he added, I'll note what was reported. Those words should have been simple. Instead, they landed in me like a door locking. What was reported? Not what Marilyn would call a misunderstanding. Not what Howard would soften into a tense holiday moment. Not what Tessa would pretend she didn't fully see. Reported. On the drive home, Sadie fell asleep in the back seat. Grant kept both hands on the wheel. I watched bare trees pass along the road and thought of all the years I had let my mother turn facts into fog. At home, I made Sadie soup and toast. She ate half, then curled up on the couch with a blanket. Grant went to the garage to bring in a small file box we had used for tax papers. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The folder name came to me before I could think better of it. Ellis Documentation. Inside it, I made subfolders by date. Thanksgiving, medical, messages, school, financial. I uploaded the photos Grant had taken, scanned the urgent care paperwork, and typed the timeline while the details were still sharp. 6:14 p.m., Sadie seated beside me. 6:16 p.m., Marilyn placed hand on Sadie's shoulder. 6:17 p.m., Sadie on floor. Visible redness on right wrist. My fingers trembled, but they did not stop. Then I opened a blank document and listed what I had done for Marilyn and Howard in the past 12 months. 45 rides to appointments, 18 prescription pickups, 12 insurance calls, 9 late utility bills handled before shutoff notices became problems, 3 weekends watching their beagle, Pepper, while they drove to Florida and posted sunset photos from Naples. I stared at the list until the numbers blurred. I had called it helping. They had called it duty. Marilyn had never needed a daughter as much as she needed unpaid staff with a childhood wound. Grant read over my shoulder without touching the keyboard. You don't have to burn the house down, he said. I'm not. I opened my email and wrote to Howard, because Marilyn will only turn every sentence into theater. Dad, effective today, I will no longer manage your household bills, medical appointments, prescriptions, insurance calls, online accounts, or transportation. You and Mom will need to make other arrangements. I read it 3 times. No apology, no explanation big enough for him to argue with. Then I pressed send. After that, I deleted their saved passwords from my browser. I removed their appointments from my calendar. I turned off every reminder with Marilyn's name on it. For a minute, nothing happened. No thunder, no punishment, no voice from heaven calling me selfish. Just my kitchen, my sleeping daughter, my husband standing beside me, and one clean, empty space on my calendar where my mother used to live. I whispered, I didn't abandon them. Grant looked at me. I resigned. The first call came Thursday at 10:22 a.m. I was at my kitchen sink, rinsing Sadie's cereal bowl, when Marilyn's name lit up my phone. For years, that name had been a command. I could be working, cooking, sick, or exhausted, and still my body would answer before my mind could object. This time, I watched it ring. Her voicemail arrived 30 seconds later. Nora, I'm still at the house. My physical therapy appointment is at 10. You're late. Not worried, not confused, late. As if I had clocked in and failed my shift. At 10:48, she called again. At 11:13, Howard texted, Your mother is very upset. Don't make this worse. I stood there with my phone in my hand, feeling something old rise in me. The urge to explain, to smooth it over, to say I had not meant to hurt anyone, even while the red mark on Sadie's wrist was still fresh in my camera roll. Grant came in from the garage and saw my face. Don't answer guilt like it's an emergency, he said. So I didn't. By afternoon, Marilyn changed stages. If she could not pull me back privately, she would punish me publicly. Her Facebook post appeared at 2:36. Some children forget who held them when they were small. A mother's heart breaks quietly, but God sees everything. No names. She never needed names. She wrote in bruised little riddles so people could fill in the villain themselves. By dinner, there were 27 comments. Praying for you, Marilyn. Kids today don't honor parents anymore. You gave everything. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty. I read them while Sadie colored at the table, drawing a house with a purple roof and 6 windows. In her picture, every window had a yellow light. My chest tightened. These people had eaten my mother's pies at church potlucks. They had heard her sigh about sacrifice and family. They had no idea she could make a child feel homeless inside her own dining room. Aunt Ruth sent me a private message. Your mom is devastated. Whatever happened, you only get one mother. I almost typed back, my daughter only gets one childhood. Instead, I took a screenshot. That became a new folder. Public smear. Grant found me at the laptop after Sadie went to bed. How many? He asked. Screenshots? He nodded. Enough to make me look cruel if anyone only sees her side. And he pulled out the chair beside me. Then, we make sure there is another side. I saved everything. The posts, the comments, the text, the voicemails where Marilyn's voice went from wounded to sharp when she forgot to sound fragile. At 8:09, Howard called. I answered because I wanted one clean sentence on record. Nora, he said, tired and thin. Your mother cried all day. Did she ask how Sadie's wrist is? Silence. Then a sigh. You know your mother. She says things when she's hurt. She hurt an 8-year-old. She didn't mean it that way. There it was, the family motto, the blanket thrown over every broken thing. I looked toward the hallway where Sadie was sleeping. Dad, I said, I didn't change their bills. I didn't touch their money. I didn't block their doctors. I only stopped doing the work. You don't sound like yourself. For the first time, that did not frighten me. No, I said, this is me. You're just meeting the version who stopped reporting for duty. I ended the call before he could hand me back to Marilyn. Outside, the November street was quiet. Inside, my phone kept lighting up with other people's pity for a woman who had never once apologized. I did not answer. I saved. Tessa did not call after Thanksgiving. She did not call after urgent care. She waited until Saturday while I folded laundry. Nora, she said, too careful. Can we talk like adults? Oh, that depends, I said. Are we using facts or Mom's version? She sighed. See, you're so hostile. I placed Sadie's pajamas in the drawer. Mom pushed my daughter. She moved her. I was there. Then say what you saw. The pause told me everything. Tessa was choosing words that would not upset Marilyn, even with Marilyn nowhere near the call. I saw Mom get frustrated, she said. I saw Sadie lose her balance. I don't think Mom meant for her to fall. That almost sounded kind, which made it worse. Tessa, Sadie is 8. She was sitting at a table in her own house. She shouldn't have been at the grown-up table if Mom was uncomfortable with it. I stopped moving. There it was, dressed up as manners. Marilyn's comfort mattered more than anyone else's dignity. Tessa's voice sharpened. Mom says you cut them off. She missed physical therapy because of you. She missed it because she did not arrange a ride. You know they depend on you. No, they trained me to believe that. Downstairs, Grant and Sadie were making pancakes. I heard my daughter laugh, and the sound steadied me. Tessa lowered her voice. You're acting like Mom is some kind of monster. I'm acting like my daughter is not a sacrifice. She's your mother, Nora. And Sadie is my child. Another silence opened between us. I pictured Tessa in her bright kitchen, coffee cooling beside her. She had spent her life standing in the warmest patch of Marilyn's approval and calling it love. You always do this, she said. You make everything about how hard you had it. No, Tess. Everyone else made my life about how useful I could be. That's not fair. Do you remember the summer after my senior year? I asked. What? Do you remember me waiting for college letters? She exhaled. Mom said you changed your mind. She said you didn't want to leave home. My throat burned, but my voice stayed calm. Of course she did. Well, what is that supposed to mean? It means you never questioned a story that made your life easier. For once, she had no quick answer. I let the silence sit there with all the birthdays Marilyn had forgotten, all the errands Tessa assumed I would handle, all the times my obedience made her world softer. At last, she whispered, I don't want to be in the middle. You were in the room, I said. That is not the same thing. She hung up without saying goodbye. Downstairs, Sadie laughed again, bright and safe. For years, I had begged my sister to see me. That morning, I stopped begging. The call came while I was matching receipts. Mrs. Whitaker? A woman asked. This is Linda from Maple Ridge Elementary. We had a call from Sadie's grandmother. My pencil stopped. Which grandmother? Marilyn Ellis. She says she was listed as an emergency contact. She was concerned Sadie might need to be released to family if you were unavailable. Unavailable. That word slid under my skin. What exactly did she say? Linda lowered her voice. She said there had been stress at home. She said you were isolating Sadie from relatives and might not be thinking clearly. My office blurred. Marilyn had complained, posted, cried, and accused. But calling Sadie school was different. That was a hand reaching toward my child. Do not release my daughter to anyone, I said. My husband and I are coming in. Grant left work early. We drove with the radio off. The school looked painfully normal. Red brick, a flag in wind, paper turkeys in the windows. Sadie had made one last week. She gave it purple feathers because, she said, brown is too sad for Thanksgiving. Diane Mercer met us in the office with a folder and the calm face of a woman who had seen family messes arrive wearing Sunday clothes. Mrs. Whitaker, Mr. Whitaker, she said, we don't take sides in family disagreements, but we do protect pickup procedures. I understand, Grant said. That's why we're here. I removed Marilyn and Howard from every emergency list. Grant added a pickup password. We wrote down that no gifts, notes, calls, or visits from them should reach Sadie without our approval. Diane made each change slowly, then turned the monitor so we could confirm it. "Your daughter is safe here," she said. But Mrs. Ellis sounded determined. I gave a small laugh that did not feel like laughter. She usually is when she thinks something belongs to her. Diane looked at me then, not with pity, with recognition. "Children are not property," she said. The sentence was so simple I almost cried. When Sadie's class passed the office for music, she saw us through the glass. Her face lit up, then folded with worry. "Mom? Dad? Am I in trouble?" I knelt in the hallway. "No, sweetheart. We just had to fix some grown-up paperwork." "Is Grandma Marilyn coming?" Grant answered before I could. "No, not without us." Sadie nodded, but she held my sleeve for 3 seconds before following her class. 3 seconds was enough to tell me what Thanksgiving had done. On the way home, I saved the school notes in the Ellis documentation folder. I added the date, time, and Linda's words. Then I made one more note. Marilyn had not lost control by accident. She was looking for another door. So I locked the school one. Grant checked the doorbell camera after dinner, while Sadie sat on the living room rug, building a tiny cardboard house from an old cereal box. "She's making rooms for every stuffed animal," he said. I looked over. Sadie had drawn windows on the box with a purple marker. Every window had curtains. Every door had a heart. A child who had been pushed from a chair was still designing places where everyone could belong. Grant opened the security app on his laptop. Thanksgiving night, front porch, after they left. My stomach tightened. "It won't show the dining room." "I know," he said. "But people say things when they think the house has stopped listening." He moved the timeline slowly. Cars passed in the dark, leaves dragged across the porch. Then Marilyn appeared, wrapped in her camel coat, purse pressed under one arm like a shield. Howard followed her out, slower, one hand on the railing. Grant turned up the volume. Marilyn's voice came through thin but clear. "She'll come crawling back when the bills start falling. She always does." My breath caught. There was no sadness in her voice, no regret, no shock over what had happened to Sadie, just irritation that her favorite tool had stopped working. Howard rubbed the back of his neck. "Barb, the little girl did get hurt." Marilyn turned on him so fast I saw him flinch. "Don't start," she snapped. "Nora needs to remember her place." My hand went cold on the table. Grant paused the video. The room was quiet except for Sadie humming in the living room. I had heard those words at Thanksgiving, but hearing them again outside, away from candles and witnesses and raised voices, made them cleaner, crueler. This was not a holiday mistake. This was policy. I swallowed hard. "Play it again." "Nora, please." He played it again. "She'll come crawling back. Again. Nora needs to remember her place." The third time, I did not cry. Something in me settled instead, like a lock sliding into place. Grant saved the clip. He labeled it with the date and time. He added it to Ellis documentation under video. Then he backed it up to a drive and emailed a copy to himself. "Paper remembers what people deny," he said. I stared at the frozen image of my mother on our porch, her mouth open around the truth she never meant me to keep. For years, Marilyn had lived by one rule. If nobody could prove it, it did not happen. She could say I misunderstood. She could say Sadie was dramatic. She could say family stress made everyone sensitive. Howard would stand beside her and sigh until the lie sounded reasonable. But not this time. This time, her own voice had stepped out of the dark and testified. Later, when I went upstairs, Sadie was asleep with one hand curled under her cheek. Her wrist looked better. That should have comforted me. It did not. because some injuries fade faster than the lesson behind them. I stood in her doorway and made myself a promise I did not say aloud. My daughter would never learn to call cruelty manners. She would never be trained to shrink so someone else could feel tall. And Marilyn Ellis would never again walk into my home and decide who belonged at my table. Tessa told me later she almost canceled. She sat outside Marilyn and Howard's house while Lily asked if Grandma Marilyn had cookies. The porch wore a fall wreath, though December had pushed cold into Ohio. Inside, everything looked normal. Her house smelled like cinnamon and polish. Cruelty wore a cardigan and asked if you wanted coffee. Howard sat in his recliner with the TV muted. Marilyn kissed Lily's hair, then gave Tessa that injured smile meant to make someone else feel guilty. "I'm glad at least one daughter still believes in family," she said. Tessa swallowed the answer she should have given. Lily settled on the rug with Pearl, the plastic unicorn she carried everywhere. Pearl had a paper crown in purple glitter. To Lily, it was a kingdom. Tessa was pouring coffee when Marilyn crossed the room. There was plenty of space, a clear path around the rug, 2 feet of carpet between Marilyn's shoe and Pearl. Marilyn looked down. Then she stepped on the unicorn, hard. The snap was small, but Lily heard it like thunder. Pearl's horn broke off and rolled under the coffee table. Lily stared, then burst into tears. "Mom!" Tessa shouted. "Why would you do that?" Marilyn lifted her shoe and frowned. "It's plastic, Tessa. Don't teach her to fall apart over junk." Lily crawled toward the broken horn. "She's not junk." Tessa dropped beside her. "I know, baby. I know." Marilyn folded her arms. "You're raising her soft, just like Nora is raising Sadie." That was a sentence. Not the broken toy. Not even the crying child. The sentence. Tessa finally saw Thanksgiving without my pain blocking her view. Sadie on the floor, Marilyn's hand, Howard's silence, my face when nobody moved. It had not been an accident. It had been a belief. Children should be corrected. Daughters should be managed. Anyone small enough to hurt was small enough to blame. Howard pushed himself halfway out of the recliner. "Barb, maybe—" "Sit down, Howard," Marilyn said. And he did. Tessa stood with Lily in her arms. "We're leaving." Marilyn's face hardened. "Oh, don't be dramatic." Tessa reached for Lily's coat. Her hand shook and she missed the sleeve twice. If you've watched someone excuse cruelty and call it love, leave a like and comment what you would tell Nora to do. Stay with the story, because the next truth will make the Ellis family look at Marilyn differently. At the door, Howard said, "Tess, wait." She turned back only long enough to say, "You waited too long." In the car, Lily held Pearl's broken body against her coat. Tessa cried without making a sound. For the first time, she understood that silence does not keep peace. Sometimes it hands a child to the person breaking things. Tessa showed up the next morning with shame all over her face. Grant opened the door. He did not smile, but he stepped aside. I was at the kitchen table when she walked in, holding a paper napkin like evidence. Inside was Pearl's broken horn, glitter still on the plastic. "I'm sorry," she said. 2 words, too small for the room. For once, she did not look like Marilyn's polished daughter. She looked like a woman who had heard glass breaking under her feet. "You were right," she whispered. I wanted that sentence to fix something, but I saw Sadie on the floor again. I saw every year Tessa had looked away. So I said, being right did not protect my child. Tessa flinched. Lily sat in the living room with Sadie, both girls quiet the way children get when adults have been careless nearby. Grant stayed close enough to hear, far enough not to take over. Tessa pulled out a chair. Mom always said you exaggerated. I know. She said you liked being hurt. I know. She said you were jealous of me. I laughed once. That one was useful, wasn't it? Her face reddened. No, I said. Sit with it. Every time I said Mom was cruel, you had a reason not to believe me. Every time I left work to drive Dad somewhere, you said I was better at handling them. I didn't understand. You didn't have to. Understanding would have cost you comfort. She looked down. I thought about our old bedroom, split by a bookshelf. Tessa's side had ribbons and framed certificates. Mine had library books under the bed and a notebook full of girls who boarded buses and never looked back. Do you remember senior year? I asked. Tessa nodded. You were writing all the time. Mrs. Keene helped me apply to programs. Ohio State. Kenyon. A summer workshop in New York. I checked the mailbox every day. Tessa frowned. Mom said you changed your mind. Mom said college wasn't for everyone. Then she needed help with bills. Then Dad's knee got worse. Then you had wedding plans. Somehow, my leaving became selfish before I ever packed a bag. Tessa covered her mouth. The worst part, I said, is not that you believed her. It's that the story made life easier, so you never tested it. And tears slipped down her cheeks. What do you want me to do? I looked toward the living room. Sadie was helping Lily tape a cardboard roof onto a dollhouse. Start telling the truth when I'm not in the room, I said. And don't ask me to make you feel better before you've made anything right. For the first time in our lives, my sister did not defend our mother. She took out her phone and placed it on the table. I'll tell you exactly what happened yesterday, she said. Record it. That was the first apology I believed. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. Not loud, not angry, just 3 polite taps that made my whole body go cold before I even reached the door. A woman stood on the porch in a gray coat, holding a badge and a folder. Mrs. Whitaker? My name is Karen Holt. I'm with Franklin County Children's Services. For a moment, the hallway tilted. Sadie was at the kitchen table, gluing cotton balls onto a paper snowman. Grant had just come home early because Tessa was supposed to stop by and finish her written statement about Pearl. I heard myself ask, is my daughter okay? Karen's expression softened, but not enough to comfort me. We received a report concerning Sadie's welfare. I'd like to speak with you and see the home. Grant stepped beside me. His hand touched the small of my back, steady and warm. Of course, he said. Please come in. That sentence saved me from panic, because every part of me wanted to slam the door and scream Marilyn's name into the street. Karen sat at our kitchen table. Sadie looked at her badge, then at me. Mom? You're not in trouble, sweetheart, I said. Karen explained the report in careful words. Emotional instability, isolation from extended family, possible neglect, concern that Sadie was being coached to fear her grandparents. Each phrase landed like it had been chosen by someone who knew exactly where to cut. Tessa arrived halfway through and stopped dead in the entryway. When she understood, her face drained. Mom did this, she whispered. Karen glanced at her. I can't discuss the source of a report. Grant answered before I could. We understand. He opened the refrigerator when Karen asked. Milk, eggs, leftovers, sliced apples, yogurt cups, the chicken soup Sadie liked. He showed her Sadie's room, her school folder, her winter coat hanging by the garage door. It felt humiliating to prove that my child was loved. Then Karen asked to speak with Sadie alone. My knees nearly gave out. Grant held my hand in the hallway while my daughter sat in the living room with a stranger and told the truth in a voice too small for the weight it carried. "Grandma Marilyn moved me," Sadie said. "I fell. She said I didn't know my place." Karen asked if anyone hurt her at home. "No," Sadie said. "Mom cried after." Dad took pictures because he said grown-ups have to tell the truth. I pressed my fist to my mouth. When Karen came back, I had the folder ready. Urgent care paperwork. Photos of Sadie's wrist and knee. The email to Howard. Screenshots of Marilyn's posts. The school note about the phone call. Tessa's written account of Pearl. The porch camera transcript. Karen took copies. Her face gave away nothing. "I'm not making a final determination today," she said. "But I can see you've been documenting." "My mother taught me not to," I said quietly. "My husband taught me to start." For the first time, Karen looked directly at me as a person, not a case. That was wise. After she left, Sadie climbed into my lap, though she was getting too big for it. I held her until my legs went numb. Tessa stood by the sink, crying openly. "I am so sorry," she said. I looked at my daughter's paper snowman, one cotton ball arm crooked and brave. "Sorry can wait," I said. "Right now, we protect her." For the next 2 weeks, every phone call sounded like a verdict. The call came on a rainy Thursday, 13 days after Karen Holt had sat at my kitchen table. I answered in the laundry room while Sadie did spelling homework. "Mrs. Whitaker," Karen said, "we're closing the assessment. We found no indication of neglect or abuse in your home." My knees touched the dryer. Sadie appears safe, cared for, and supported. The records you provided were helpful. Helpful. That small word held 2 weeks of wondering if one cruel lie could outweigh 8 years of love. "Thank you," I managed. Karen paused. "I can't discuss the reporter, but keep documenting contact involving the school or your property." After we hung up, I sat on the floor between towels and dryer sheets, folded over like something allowed to be tired. Grant found me there. "It's closed," I said. He knelt and took my hands. "Then we stopped letting your mother choose the battlefield." The next step had a brass nameplate in downtown Columbus. Vivian Ross wore a charcoal suit, square glasses, and the expression of a woman who charged by the hour because chaos wasted daylight. I told her everything. Thanksgiving, urgent care, Facebook, the school call, Pearl, CPS, the porch video. She listened without gasping once. "Your mother likes performance," she said. "We won't give her one." Tessa sat beside me, pale and quiet. Vivian continued. "We document. We set clear boundaries. If she crosses them, we show the pattern." She drafted a letter. Marilyn and Howard Ellis were not to contact Sadie directly, appear at her school, come to our home, send messages through relatives, or deliver gifts without our consent. "It is not a court order," Vivian said, "but it tells them the Whisper Network is over." That evening, Marilyn called from a number I did not recognize. I answered because Vivian had told me to note every contact. Grant stood beside me. "You brought a lawyer into this family?" Marilyn asked. Her voice was low. Not crying now. Never crying when there was no audience. "No," I said. "You brought strangers to my daughter's school and my front door." "You'll regret humiliating me. I regret giving you access to Sadie as long as I did." "You think papers make you powerful?" I looked at the letter on my table. Vivian's name printed clean and black at the top. "No," I said. "They make you visible." And for once, Marilyn hung up first. I saved the number, time, and her words. Then I opened the drawer where Grant kept our credit files. Vivian had ended the meeting with one more instruction. Check your reports, that she had said. People who feel entitled to your obedience often feel entitled to your name. The folder weighted under my hand, thin as paper and heavy as a warning. I pulled my credit report at the kitchen table after Savy went to bed. Grant sat across from me with a yellow legal pad, not because he needed one, but because he knew the sight of paper made me feel less trapped. At first, the report looked boring. Student loan, closed. Car loan, paid. Credit card, current. Then I saw one I did not recognize. Midwestern Home and Credit. Opened when I was 22. Mailing address, Marilyn and Howard Ellis's house. Balance remaining, $11,800. I read it again, slower, as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into mercy. They used my name, I said. Grant's face changed, not surprised, worse, prepared. I clicked through the account history. Charges from hardware stores, a roofing company payment, late fees, minimum payments made just often enough to keep the thing breathing. A second file showed my name tied to an old home repair loan, cosigner, signature on file. Grant leaned closer. That is not your signature. I knew it before he said it. The letters were too round. My N had never looked like that. For a while, I could not speak. I was back at 22, wearing a grocery store polo under a diner apron, counting cash tips in my car before handing most of it to Marilyn because the family was tight this month. Tight. That was the word she used while she opened credit in my name. I called Tessa. She answered on the second ring. What happened? Check your credit. Nora, now. Owen got on the line 20 minutes later, his voice clipped and angry. There's a store account, furniture, opened under Tessa's name 6 years ago. Delivery address was your parents' house. Tessa made a sound I had never heard from her. Not crying, cracking. They bought the living room set with me? With you, I said. Not for you. The line went quiet. All our lives, Marilyn had dressed the truth differently for each daughter. I was the workhorse, praised only when I carried more. Tessa was a porcelain one, displayed and admired. But a shelf and a harness are both ways to keep a person still. Vivian answered my email before sunrise. Freeze your credit. Place fraud alerts. Save full reports. Do not call the creditors emotionally. We dispute in writing. By breakfast, Grant had printed FTC forms. Owen had scanned Tessa's documents. I sat beside my sister over a video call while both of us froze our credit, one bureau at a time. Tessa's eyes were swollen. I thought I was loved better, she said. I looked at the account with my mother's address and my stolen name. No, I said. You were lied to prettier. She did not argue. That was how I knew something in her had finally broken clean instead of bending. Later, I wrote one more note for the file. They did not just take my time. They did not just take my silence. They used my name like a spare key and called the theft family. Grant read it over my shoulder and kissed the top of my head. Keep going, he said. So I did. I saved every report, every number, every false signature. For once, my mother's mess had an account history. The storage place sat behind a tire shop off a service road, all roll-up doors under gray sky. Tessa had the payment emails. I still had the gate code because Marilyn once sent me there for Christmas lights while she waited in the car. That was how it worked. She kept the story. I carried the boxes. Grant brought gloves and a flashlight. Owen stayed near Tessa, quiet but ready. The unit smelled like dust, cardboard, and old fabric softener. Inside were broken chairs, a fake Christmas tree, framed photos, and tubs marked kitchen, church bazaar, winter coats. Mom said this was all sentimental, Tessa murmured. Some of it is, I said, just not how she meant. We dug for almost an hour. Most of it was junk dressed up as legacy. Then I saw a blue bin wedged behind an old walker. Nora, high school. My name was in Marilyn's handwriting. I pulled it out myself. The lid stuck, then popped loose with a sound that made Tessa flinch. On top were yearbooks, notebooks, and envelopes tied with a rubber band so old it snapped in my hand. Ohio State. Kenyon. A summer writing program in New York. I opened the New York envelope first. Congratulations. The word stared back at me like it had waited 18 years to breathe. Accepted. Scholarship awarded. Housing assistance available. Response requested by June 15th. I read it once, then again, then a third time, because my mind kept refusing what my hands held. Tessa found another envelope. This one was opened. Inside was a second acceptance letter and a folded yellow note. Don't tell Nora. She'll leave and never help again. Marilyn's handwriting, calm, neat, certain. That was what made it crueler than rage. I sat on the concrete floor. For years, I had believed no letter came because I was not chosen, not talented enough, not brave enough, not worth sending away. Marilyn had let that lie become my life because she needed me close enough to use. Tessa whispered, I didn't know. I looked at her, the old anger rising without fire. No, I said, but you benefited. She covered her mouth. Owen found a thin folder near the bottom. Tess, he said softly. It held a copy of an old check from my account, made out to a banquet hall. The memo line said, Tessa wedding deposit. Tessa sank beside me. Mom said they paid for that. I know. I danced in that room. I know. She cried then. Not pretty tears, not performance. Something inside her understood that her golden childhood had been polished with someone else's loss. Grant photographed every page. Owen scanned the check. I placed the letters in a folder and held the New York one longer. Not because I could go back, because someone had tried to bury proof that I had once been invited forward. Marilyn's message came Sunday morning while I was pinning Sadie's hair. Come explain yourself like an adult. No hello, no question about the credit reports, no word about the letters in the blue bin. Just a command dressed up as dignity. Tessa received the same message 10 minutes later. She invited Aunt Ruth, Tessa said. The Carlsons too, and Pastor Ed. Of course she did. Marilyn never entered a fight alone. She brought witnesses, then cried until they became jurors. I wanted to let her perform to empty chairs. But Vivian answered with calm precision. If you go, take copies, not originals. Do not raise your voice. Let documents do the talking. Grant stood beside me while I printed the folder. Urgent care records, school notes, CPS notice, screenshots, credit reports, storage photos, and Marilyn's note. He slid each page into a plastic sleeve. She'll go for the paper, he said. I'll stand between her and the folder. That was Grant. No speech, just a man putting his body where damage landed. By 3 o'clock, Tessa and Owen pulled into our driveway. Tessa looked like sleep had given up on her. Owen carried a second folder. We drove separately to Marilyn and Howard's house. Nobody wanted to be trapped in the same car. The house looked warm from outside. Wreath on the door, porch swept, curtains open. Inside, apple pie and coffee wrapped around me like a lie. Aunt Ruth sat on the sofa with a tissue ready. The Carlson stood near the mantel. Pastor Ed nodded sadly, as if grief had been assigned. Howard stood by the bookshelf. His eyes went straight to my folder, then away. Marilyn came from the kitchen in a soft blue sweater. Her eyes were pink, but her mascara was perfect. "My girls," she said, as if we had arrived for Christmas. Tessa stiffened beside me. Marilyn spread her hands toward the room. "I thought if people who love this family were present, we could speak honestly." Honestly. The words should have cracked in her mouth. Aunt Ruth looked at me. "Nora, honey, your mother has been heartbroken." I set the folder on the coffee table. Not opened, not offered, just placed. Marilyn's gaze dropped to it, and for one clean second, her face forgot to be wounded. Grant moved half a step closer. Pastor Ed cleared his throat. "Maybe we can start with prayer." "No," I said. Every head turned. I kept my voice level. "Prayer is not a curtain. Not today." Marilyn inhaled sharply, ready to bleed in public. I looked around the room at every person who had heard her version before mine. "You came because my mother said her daughters turned cruel," I said. "So let's talk about what this family has been built on." Then I opened the folder. I started with Sadie. A child had fallen first, so the truth would begin there. I placed the urgent care record on the coffee table. "Mild wrist sprain, abrasion to the knee," I read. "Reported cause, not from a chair during a family gathering." Aunt Ruth's tissue lowered. Marilyn gave a soft laugh. "Doctors write whatever dramatic mothers tell them." I slid out the school note. 3 days later, Marilyn called Maple Ridge Elementary and said I was unstable. She asked about access to Sadie. Mrs. Carlson frowned. "You called the school?" "I was worried," Marilyn said. "A grandmother can worry," I said. "She cannot sneak around a parent." Then came Vivian's letter. Then the CPS closing notice. I read only the line that mattered. No indication of neglect or abuse in the Whitaker home. Pastor Ed removed his glasses. Marilyn's voice sharpened. "So now government workers know family?" "No," Tessa said. "But they know when a loved child is not the problem." Tessa opened Owen's folder. Her hand shook, but her voice did not. She placed her store credit record beside mine. Furniture charges. Delivery address? Marilyn and Howard's house. I added my credit report. Balance, $11,800. Old repair loan. My name? A signature that was not mine. Aunt Ruth whispered, "Howard?" He stared at the carpet. So I brought out the blue bin photographs. The college letters. The scholarship offer. The New York writing program. The yellow note in Marilyn's handwriting. "Don't tell Nora. She'll leave and never help again." People stopped watching me and started watching my mother. Marilyn's mouth trembled, but no tears came. Nora was not ready. She had foolish dreams. "I was 18, I said. "You let me think the world had said no, because you needed me to keep saying yes." Howard whispered, "Your mother thought you would leave." I looked at him. "So you let her steal my future because you needed a secretary?" His face collapsed. Tessa stepped forward. "And you used my name, too. You didn't love me more. You lied to me prettier." Marilyn stood so fast the table rattled. "Enough!" She lunged for the folder. Grant stepped between us. "Do not touch it." "I am their mother," Marilyn cried. "No," I said. "You kept receipts on love and called it sacrifice." Then I played the porch video. My mother's voice filled the room. "She'll come crawling back when the bills start falling. She always does." Howard's protest followed. Then Marilyn again. Nora needs to remember her place. Nobody spoke. The pie sat untouched. The coffee had gone cold. Marilyn looked around, searching for one face willing to save her story. Pastor Ed stood. "Marilyn," he said, "you need to stop." Just one sentence, and her performance gave way. The fallout came in envelopes and locked doors. Vivian disputed the accounts. Tessa and Owen froze their credit. Maple Ridge marked Sadie's file. Marilyn and Howard were not allowed pickup or contact. For the first time, my parents' names opened nothing. Still, Marilyn tried. One wet December evening, Sadie and Lily were building a blanket fort when someone pounded on the front door. "Sadie!" Marilyn shouted. "Grandma's here! Come tell your mother to stop this!" Sadie froze. I wrapped my arm around her. "Upstairs, baby." Tessa stood at the bottom step, pale but steady. "Does she get to come in?" Sadie whispered. "No," I said. "Not because she's loud." Grant opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. "Marilyn, leave the property." "You can't keep me from my granddaughter." "I can tonight." The police arrived within minutes. One officer read the papers Grant handed him. "Ma'am, you need to leave." "I am her grandmother." "Not tonight, ma'am." Those words were a locked door staying locked. Howard called 4 days later. "Your mother isn't doing well," he said. "This family is falling apart." "Did you know about the letters?" I asked. He breathed in, then said nothing. That silence finished what his excuses had started years ago. "You were supposed to be my father," I said. "I still am." "No, you were expected to be." I hung up gently. A week later, we took the girls ice skating outside Columbus. Sadie fell twice. Lily cried over wet gloves. Owen spilled hot chocolate, and Grant bought 6 more like that was a cure. Tessa laughed until she cried. I watched Sadie wobble across the ice, arms wide, trusting someone would reach for her if she fell. That was family, not bloodline demanding payment, not a table where children stayed small, a hand reaching down before a child learns to stop asking. That night, I taped my old New York scholarship letter above my desk and enrolled in an online writing class. "What are you doing?" Sadie asked. "Picking up something someone tried to throw away." Later she asked, "Is Aunt Tessa family?" "Yes," I said. "She's learning how to be." Marilyn and Howard still lived in the house, perhaps still calling us ungrateful. But their story had holes for truth to walk through. My revenge was never destroying them. It was refusing to let them destroy my daughter. Life teaches us that blood can explain where we came from, but it cannot excuse the people who hurt us. A seat at your table should be earned by love, respect, and kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like and share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you listening from today? Thank you for staying until the end. Wishing you health, peace, and strength. See you again in the next story on Revenge Glow.